When I was around 4 to 7 years old, we lived somewhere in the southern part of the Philippines. It was a big old house, the kind that echoed even when you spoke softly. My mom worked in another part of the country and only came home every 6 months, so it was just me and my nanny most of the time. The first strange thing came to me in a dream. In it, there was a festival in our small district. People were parading wooden statues of young Jesus Christ. The Philippines is a very religious country, but that dream didn't feel holy at all. It felt off. As the parade passed, one of the statue's heads turned straight towards me. Its face changed into something hideous, smiling but angry at the same time. I remember waking up drenched in sweat and crying. I refused to sleep again after that and ended up being in the hospital for 2 days. I didn't really understand it back then, just that it felt too real. A few weeks after that, it happened again. My nanny was changing the sheets in the master bedroom. The bed was facing the door and beside it was my mom's dressing table. It had a big mirror and a large empty space at the bottom for a chair. That space was big enough for an adult to crawl in. I was just watching her from the doorway as she fixed the left side of the bed, then walked on the right side. When she bent down to tuck the covers, someone stood up from under the dressing table. It looked like a burned person. Its skin was dark, uneven, and some parts were cracked like charcoal. It didn't look at me. It didn't even seem to notice me. It just helped my nanny fix the other side of the bed like it was normal. I called out to her, but she told me to just stop joking around. Still, I could see she was nervous too. After a few minutes, the burned person kneeled back down and disappeared under the table again. Looking back now, I wasn't that tall. Maybe taller than I was as a kid, but definitely shorter than me now. The next time I saw it was in the living room. I was watching cartoons, playing with my toys at the same time. One of my toys fell beside the sofa, and when I reached down to get it, I saw it again, closer this time. I only saw its back, but I knew it was the same burned person. My whole body froze. I ran away and left the TV on, straight to my nanny. The last time was the worst. I invited 2 of my friends over to play. We played board games, video games, all that. When we got bored, we decided to play hide and seek. One of my friends was it. One hid under the table. I hid under the bed in the master bedroom, the same one from before. I must have fallen asleep for a few seconds. When I woke up, I just knew something wasn't right. The air felt heavier. Then I turned my head. The burned person was right there with me under the bed, staring. Its skin was black and peeling. I could see some of the red flesh underneath. It had no eyelids. I didn't understand that back then, but now I know it was because the skin got burned away. I could see its veins on the side of its head, and it had no hair at all. It looked like Gollum, but way too human, and it was real. I think I passed out after that, because when I woke up I was already in my room. That was the last time I ever saw it. But sometimes strange things still happen around the house. A lady walking past the window that none of the neighbors could see, weird shadows that didn't belong to anything, small quiet moments that felt like someone was watching. People sometimes ask me if I believe in ghosts. I always say yes. Maybe science can't explain them yet, but I've seen enough to know they exist. I live in Central Ontario, Canada, and one summer 3 years ago I had taken a job opportunity in a small town up in North Muskoka. The town itself was a quaint and quiet place surrounded by woods, water, and cottages. I worked in town during the day, and by night I leave work to stay at one of the cottages owned by my boss and business owner that I worked for. The cottage I stayed in was shared by the owner and 3 other employees over the summer. It was surrounded by trees and forests with other cottages spread sporadically around the area. The property had the cottage on one side perched up on the rock face with a large set of stairs leading down to the lower section of the property. That part sat right along the local lake. On the lower section of the lake, there was a boathouse followed by a sauna and a small separate building close by. We worked long days and would often use the sauna as a place to unwind. The sauna sat right in front of the lake, so it was great to get warm in the sauna and then walk into the lake to cool off. One night after a long day of work, I arrived late to the cottage around maybe 11 p.m. Feeling stiff and achy as usual, I decided that tonight would be a good night for the sauna. I asked others I stayed with to see if they wanted to join me, but they said no. I still wanted to go and I took a solo trip down instead. After grabbing my trunks and a towel, I headed out. I turned the sauna on and took a seat to unwind in the heat. After about 10 minutes, I had felt it was time to cool off and reset myself. I opened the door to the sauna, and the warm light from my lamp illuminated my way. I walked down towards the dark lake. As I approached the lake, I slowly walked into the water as it was a bit cool that night. When I reached about knee level, I was abruptly alerted by a loud and drawn-out whistling sound. I stopped dead in my tracks, full body tingling with goosebumps. I scanned the area for what that possibly could have been. Nothing but trees, darkness, and a small amount of light illuminating from the sauna. My mind searched for logical answers. I assumed it was a local animal or one of my roommates playing a prank and trying to scare me as a joke. I brushed it off and whistled back a tune of my own. Thinking nothing of it, Almost immediately after I stopped whistling, I heard the exact same tune I just whistled from the tree line. I thought to myself, that couldn't possibly have been an animal. It copied my tone and cadence, so I chopped it up to being my roommate's. I whistled back in a more sporadic and bizarre way this time, to see if it could copy me again. Instantly, I received the exact same tone and whistled back. Not a single beat missed, and this time closer than ever. A spine-chilling cold drew over my body. I felt like every hair on my body was standing straight up, and every drop of blood from my limbs escaped me. Paralyzed in fear, I had no explanation for that sound, and my only reaction was to leave everything behind and make it to the cottage as fast as possible. I booked it up the stairs into my cottage to see every one of my roommates sitting around a table. There was no signs they went outside. I tried to calm myself, and I asked them if they had been whistling outside. Everyone said no, they were sitting in there the whole time, and silence fell over the room. This experience still gives me chills to this day. My cousin worked as a police officer for an agency that shall go unnamed. Early in his career, he was posted in a rather undesirable detail reserved for the new guys located on an island with a historical site on it. This was located in a busy area of the US, so it was necessary. It wasn't a tough gig per se, just lonely and isolating during the overnight shift. Occasionally, other officers on duty would arrive by boat if it was quiet to chit-chat and kill time. He had been warned, and what he thought was a joke, that the place was haunted and he'd better watch himself. He just laughed it off as older guys busting the new kids' balls. One night, my cousin was on duty alone on the island, sitting in a huge sort of ballroom part of the museum that had a large desk and a TV on it, along with screens showing security cameras to pass the time. Directly above him was an enormous old chandelier that he would stare at to try and count the bulbs in it. Every so often he would get up, wander the building and the grounds outside to make sure everything was quiet and in order. This particular night it was stormy and rainy, which was deflating as it seriously cut down the odds that another officer would pop in and say hello. At some point while watching TV, my cousin thought he heard a door slam on the other side of the building. Not entirely unusual. As I said, sometimes other officers would dock up and pop in. He waited a few moments, but no one arrived in the ballroom area. He felt that was odd and checked the security cameras. There didn't appear to be anyone on the cameras. One of the cameras showed the main dock and there was no boat. Still, he wasn't alarmed, as occasionally a boat would drop off another officer and leave, and perhaps he just didn't notice him on the security cameras yet. He called out again to see if anybody was there. No answer. Then moments later, he heard another door slam on the other side of the building. This got him up. He walked from the ballroom area to the main hallway, looked up and down, and no one. He called out again, but no answer. Now he was convinced the other guys were messing with him. He walked outside into the rain and briefly scanned the foggy and dark waters around the island to see if a boat was idling with officers waiting to scare him. But again, no sign of anybody. After a few minutes, he walked back inside and grabbed his radio from his belt and called over the line for a response from the other on-duty officers. Within moments, 2 other officers chirped over the wire and asked him what was up. He told them he thought one of them had been on the island because he heard doors opening and closing. One responded it wasn't him. He was on the mainland eating dinner. Another responded he was miles away on a boat patrol. At this time, my cousin was seriously confused and started to think maybe he dozed off and dreamt the sounds of doors opening and closing. He went back inside and headed back to the ballroom area. Upon arriving back in the ballroom, he saw a sight he'll never forget. The enormous chandelier above the desk had been broken off his chain and crashed into a million pieces of glass and twisted brass right onto the desk he had been sitting at. He would have certainly been seriously injured and perhaps even killed if he had been sitting in that spot just a few minutes earlier. He radioed that he had an incident on their location, and shortly thereafterwards, the other officers on duty arrived by boat on the island and came inside to survey the damage. They were awestruck. That chandelier had been hanging there for over 100 years. Both were adamant they had not been on the island that night and had no explanation for the sounds of the doors opening and closing. They certainly had nothing to do with the huge old light fixtures suddenly breaking off the ceiling and landing right on the desk. But they couldn't deny that they had heard other officers talk about strange occurrences taking place on the island over the years. To this day, my cousin has no other explanation but that some sort of entity, a ghost, a spirit or whatever, had gotten him to get up and look around and avoid being killed by a falling chandelier. He worked at that post for another year or so before his seniority got him out of there, and some poor new rookie got stuck with it. He said nothing strange has ever happened to him again, and in over 20 years since that night, he hasn't heard of anyone else having a strange experience like that.